a coffee shop which is 5 minutes away, has a cup of coffee, and after she's done with a cup of coffee, she walks back to her dorm room, right, and has a good night's sleep. Now, that 19-year-old girl is probably 1 or 2 years old today, and the year is 2030. And that actually is what Vision 2030 is. Why? Because you have the educational component of the social pillar of Vision 2030 having been achieved. Here's a young girl. We don't know what ethnicity she comes from. We don't care. We don't know where she was born. We don't care whether whatever social status she came from. But she's in university at the age of 19. And it could be any part of the country, because the education system actually has achieved its Vision 2030 goals. And in terms of infrastructure, it's pervasive across the whole country. Fiber optics, power. That is why she's in Lodwar or Moyale or Ganze or Lunga. And there's no issues of electricity. There's no issues of fiber optic connectivity, wireless connectivity. She can connect seamlessly with anybody. And the coffee shop is also wired, right? And able to electronically speak to its customers, right? And engage them. Because infrastructure, roads, you can't have a coffee shop in Lodwar if the roads don't work. If you don't have Lamu Port working and them actually getting their raw materials or exporting from Lodwar. You have this, again, the political pillar is functioning. We have a safe and secure environment anywhere in the country. That's why no matter where she is, she feels safe enough to walk around at midnight without a care in the world, anywhere.
Unless she is the threat.
Right?
To everyone else.
Exactly, she may be. Also, the healthcare system has worked, because who is she inheriting? Not her father, not her grandfather, but her great-grandfather. Her father and grandfather are alive and kicking and, doing very well. She has no issues getting her great-grandfather to bequeath her that apartment. Why? There are no uncles coming out of the woodworks and talking about, this is a young girl, in our customs and systems, we don't let women inherit. In any case, she's a great-granddaughter and I'm the son. Or I'm the because the judicial reforms are such that a young girl at the age of 19, born anywhere, has access to justice and is guaranteed.
Okay.
That's part of the reforms of Vision 2030. So, essentially, all the things we're doing, infrastructure, social pillar, judicial reforms, security reforms, you name it, they're all about a high quality of life for all, so that that girl can have that life without a care in the world.
Wow. I'm listening to you, of course, as a middle-aged, or just younger than middle-aged person.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, I will not describe you. And I'm also listening to you representing us as we are a block of people who are called the church. And I want to engage you today, especially concerning what should the church be doing towards that. Because these are a group of people, we gather every week, we talk and all those things, but we want to act. We want to be able to get off our seats and to actually act. What should we be doing, and what should we be focusing on?
Well, my view of what the church should be doing is very simple. I think the church has to be real, right? And stop living in some utopia or nirvana, where you talk to people on Sunday and you don't get real with them. I have my very strong views about the role of the church when it comes to what happened in the last election. In the run-up to the last election and during the post-election violence, and indeed, to their credit, people like the NCCK actually apologized after the fact, because the church forgot all the ideals that come from the pew, that come from our pastors, okay? All the lessons of following Jesus that we talk about every Sunday, they were totally forgotten. And the church watched. And the church got enmeshed in all our ethnic issues and rivalries, right? So if the church actually got real, and I must commend what you're doing here, because part of Mkenya Halisi, right? That's beginning to say we actually don't live in a vacuum, okay? We live in Kenya, in Rongai, and it is real, and there are real issues to deal with. How do we engage? So that when people leave church on Sundays, they actually are able to apply the lessons learned from church in their life. Sometimes I think that people disconnect completely. They have their church personality and the Monday morning personality. The Monday morning personality is that matatu driver.
You guys are agreeing so strongly. I don't know if you're seeing them or you're seeing yourself. All right.
I mean, from the matatu driver, you start with in the morning at 6 or at 5 a.m. That matatu driver was in church yesterday. That manamba who's hustling you, that tout who's hustling you and really manhandling you, was in church yesterday. The guy who's signing a deal and saying, look, this contract here, this road, it's 100 million shillings, but you bid 200 million. And we'll know what to do. The 100 million we shall share, me and you, was in church yesterday. Probably actually had a microphone like I do right now. And probably gave 100,000 shillings of that 100 million. You should even demand a proper share. When you're getting 100,000, people are stealing 100 million.
Should be 10 M.
Huh? Churches actually get 100,000 from a guy who's stealing 100 million. Now,
So you're saying they should get more from that guy who's okay.
If they're not going to be real,
Yeah.
they might as well get more. But the point is, these people that we complain about, the politicians, the public leaders, whatever they are, see, private sector or public sector, they all come to church. And we don't hold them to account. Not just and it's not just the pastors, by the way. It's got to be the congregation. We've got to hold each other to account. Right? I can assure you, in most churches in this country, a cabinet minister walks in there, the pastor first of all stops, acknowledges him. We all wait for him to come and sit in front here. And he's probably in his headlines during the week. And you're all cussing him. But when you see him, now, it's a human condition, by the way. It is not unique to Kenya. Human beings, that's how we're wired. We're wired to revere public figures, right? These are people we vote for, we elect, we admire. But churches have a special ability and role to help us hold them to account. It's difficult for people, the ordinary monarchy, to hold them to account. But churches can help, and churches don't.
Just tell me how.
Oh,
I mean, I can see us all going to the guy's office.
First of all, conversations. Let's agree. First of all, if you have a conversation about corruption, about integrity, and you say that we expect certain leaders to do certain things, you should not. You have to lead by. Churches have to lead by example. Talking, you cannot preach wine and drink water. Right? We do a lot of that. So, for instance, I expect people to be held to account. If a congregation has a cabinet minister, a director general of Vision 2030, a permanent secretary who has been reported to have done something shady, there should be some committee in that church asking, you're a congregant of ours. Okay? Is this true what we read? Nobody holds them to that kind of account, right? And I think that the conversations we have, the projects you talk about, right? You ask good questions today, right? I don't know how often that happens, that you ask questions about what ails Kenya. People complain. You've got this month where you're doing this, you've got this series. I don't know how often that happens, because that helps, because it makes people aware. So if you combine accountability with this kind of conversations that are real, that are about what's happening in Kenya, then people get informed. Because the problem I have is your congregations aren't very well informed. If I was to ask how many of you here have read the Vision 2030 document, either online or physically, how many have read it? That's quite impressive. That's about maybe 10%. That's more than I get in most places. But 10%? Surely? Vision 2030. Yet you're going to complain about your roads, about your education system, about your healthcare system, about electricity blackouts all the time, and they're all part of the transformation process. If I was to ask you how many of you are aware that we had an education task force report released last month that will radically transform this education system? How many? How many are aware? Just aware.
Not read it, but
not read it. Just aware. Half of you are not. How many of you have engaged, have read it, or know anything about it beyond having heard about it? They've also asked you, how many of you have children? I want to see how many people have children here who go to school.
That go to school?
Yes.
Like serious school or like kindergarten?
Actually,
School.
how many here have children who are either in school or will be in school in the next 10 years? Raise your hand. Raise your hand.
Some are saying they will have children.
Yes.
In 10
How
years.
many of you hope to have children in school in the next 10 to 15 years? Raise your hand up. Okay, that's my point. You don't care what kind of education system they're going to go through? Do you care? And yet we have a process that is radically going to transform the education system. Decide what kind of curriculum, content, value systems, options for their lives, and we haven't engaged. Churches can help their congregations take responsibility, civic responsibility. It doesn't end with you electing leaders. You've got to take responsibility so that when you're discussing your leaders, you have content. But you don't have content. If I was to ask you, how many of you can name 5 presidential candidates? Just put up your hand if you can name 5 presidential candidates. How many of you can name 5? How many of you can name 4 presidential candidates? How many of you can tell me what one presidential candidate vision for Kenya is? So my point is, going back to church, how many of you have a vision for Kenya?
I do.
You do? How many have a vision for yourself? So tell me, how many of you think or know the gaps between your personal vision and the vision for the country? Do you know? Have you assessed the gap between your personal vision and the country's vision? Church can help people do that. Well, the point I'm trying to make is, people here debate potential presidential candidates, potential MPs, potential governors with no content. And you get surprised that you get leaders that are not impressive. You can't blame them. So this is where I think the church can engage. When I say the church can engage and help us get real, that's what I mean.
Cool. And there's tons out there we could continue to engage with. Is it possible we can get more of this Vision 2030? We'd love to be able to pass them around.
Yeah.
Also so that,
but they're also online.
They're
it's
online.
easier to get them online, and the website is very simple.
Yeah.
It's www.vision2030, vision2030.go.ke. It's quite a heavy website because there's a lot of content. You have to navigate it. You've got this popular version, booklets online. We've got the various projects in each pillar in terms of the goals of the projects, the progress reports. They're all in there if you care about the school systems your children attend, the healthcare systems they will be in, the kind of infrastructure, the kind of judicial system. If you want that girl in 2030 to have that kind of life and she'll be your daughter, then you should engage.
So you're saying we engage in that sense, awareness and content, but also hold the people who are around us to account. Which means that if I read in the newspaper after a few months, Mugo Kibati or nini nini, I call you.
Absolutely.
You'll pick my call, eh? It says, pick my call.
That's a very good question.
Yeah.
Even if I don't welcome me to church the next Sunday. The question is, it isn't that they will pick your call. It is that you must, and look, and I'm not saying be hostile about it, by the way, because part of church and following Jesus is that you have to give people an opportunity to actually, confess and repent, and you forgive them. But at least let's go through the process. Because what happens is that we keep complaining, right? And then we are disconnected. But that will also change us. You see, at the end of the day, when I say hold, the public leaders to account, you cannot hold anyone to account unless you've held yourself to account. The ripple effect downwards is that Monday morning, that matatu driver, that procurement officer in a ministry, whoever it is, they will also begin to get ashamed of doing what they're doing if they are part of a church congregation that's holding everyone to account. Because you have to hold yourself to account before you can hold anyone else to account. Thank you.
All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. One more time. Director General of Vision 2030, Mugo Kibati.